All right, we
Okay.
are
All right.
Giving me a
officially live,
countdown.
and I will start
Yeah.
the record
Yeah.
now.
All right.
All right.
And it's Ken Kraetzer for CamVetsMedia, another edition of our Army football huddle. We're all lost a little something on Saturday in Baltimore as the Naval Academy won the game 17-16. The game Army had a lead in and just couldn't hold on to the ball, sustain a drive in the fourth quarter, and Navy came away with the win. And I know Sam and Stephanie were there. Chuck was covering a basketball game for us at Madison Square Garden that day. And Richard was at his outpost in Florida. Okay, Sam, we will give you your chance to describe what went wrong on Saturday in Baltimore.
Okay, we're gonna jump right into it, huh? Okay. So let me just start by saying that the defense played an outstanding game from start to finish. Uh, they had two minor lapses that were costly in the game. One of which was on fourth down in the fourth quarter, after the Navy fumble that had been recovered by Heidenreich. They left Heidenreich basically on man coverage on the middle of the end zone with Casey Larkin coming across to be the coverage. And it reminded me a lot of the touchdown that they gave up to Tulane back in New Orleans when it was fourth down in a similar situation. That was also a pass to the middle. And the team, which had played extremely well, for whatever reason, had a coverage lapse inside the red zone, and they did not have the back line of the end zone covered and left Casey Larkin on an island with Navy's very best playmaker and all-time receiving leader in Navy history, that being Heidenreich. And it was unfortunate because that really could have been a momentum boost in the game to continue to hold Navy down by 6 points. Another lapse that occurred was on a play previous to that. Navy, which was on the goal line on a third down, went for the quarterback sneak up the middle, not necessarily quarterback sneak anymore, but just the quarterback center dive. And Horvath immediately lost control of the ball, and the momentum of the Navy offensive line made it so that they did not even realize, with the exception of Horvath, that the ball was on the ground. And it slowly bounced to the outside of the left end of Navy's offensive line. An Army player had an opportunity to recover the ball, which would have killed the drive, but he went for the scoop, and a player from Navy, I believe the offensive tackle, managed to then figure out what was happening and got an arm swipe on the Army defender, knocked the ball out of his hands. By now, Heidenreich was aware of what was going on and was sprinting from the backside and was able to beat other Army defenders to make the recovery. And it kept Navy's drive alive when it could have been killed on the goal line. And then finally, there was, in Navy's final drive of the game, on third down, Horvath fumbled. There were several Army players around. The ball bounced cleanly up into the air. Maybe it was just momentum or the surprise of the moment, but no Army player managed to get a hand on the ball. And Horvath was able to recover his own fumble. This was critical because it gave Navy a fourth and inches, and we know that at this point, Army had no timeouts remaining. And as soon as Navy picked up the first down, the game was over. And all they had to do was run the clock out. But other than that, Army's defense really came to play. And if you had told me before this game, if Nostradamus himself had come down to be a soothsayer to explain to me stats of the game prior to the game being played, and told me that that Navy was only going to score 17 points and they were going to be held to under 300 yards, and oh, by the way, they're going to turn the ball over twice, I would have told you straight up, Army is going to win this game going away. But that's not what happened. As a matter of fact, the alarm bell that I've been sounding all season and that I have made poignantly clear about the last 7 times Army has played Navy is that the offensive game plan is, I don't know what it is they're trying to accomplish. They're not accomplishing much of anything. As a matter of fact, Navy's defense, as I pointed out last week, they're not gangbusters. They actually were having kind of an off year defensively. That was really their Achilles heel. They've given up a lot of yards, given up a lot of points. So why is it that Army has to come in and make Navy's defense look like they're the Steel Curtain or something like that? So every single time Army had the ball in the second half, it was a disaster. And some of it was self-inflicted. The opening drive of the second half, having a 13-7 lead at halftime, we're hoping and expecting that Army's going to come out with the ball. After all, they won the coin toss, and that Army would methodically drive down the field, burn most of the third quarter, and manage to put another touchdown on the board to make it 20-7. Instead, what happens is Army has a nice play on second down, is facing a 3rd and 2, and the offensive tackle jumps for a false start, backs them up 5 yards, and on the third down play, they fail to convert the third down and have to punt. Navy on their first possession of the second half is when they committed the interception. And at this point, it was looking like, okay, this may be getting pretty good, because it was on the appearance, everyone was looking like Army had achieved a pick six. But unfortunately, the Army defensive back's knee was down at the time that he intercepted the pass. However, I looked at Stephanie at that point and I said, this is great, because actually this is an extension of Army's first drive of the game. And they have a short field, and they have the ball first and 10 on a short field on Navy's side of the field. They can methodically drive this 30-35 yards, run time off the clock, and score a touchdown. That's just as good, and more time is run off the clock. Instead, they had a pathetic 3 and out. And thank goodness for Dawson Jones being Mr. Iceman out there kicking kicks, because he kicked a career-long 48-yarder that barely cleared the crossbar, gave Army a 16-7 lead.
Off a grass field.
Yeah, it just was
Darter kicking off of grass.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was just a incredible kick, and he was dead-eyed Dick the whole game. Every time he was kicking the ball, made you feel good about, in a close game, Army possibly having the ball to close out the game and a chance for a game winner. But it never came to fruition, because on Navy's subsequent drive, the defense held them to, I believe, I believe Navy might have got 1 first down, but then was held to a 3 and out and had to punt. And this is where it starts to get a little haywire, because at this point, Army's offense committed another penalty, which was a holding penalty, backed them up. We've started the fourth quarter now, and that's where the inexplicable pass occurred that looked like a desperation heave that was completely unnecessary, badly underthrown, and gave Navy the ball on the 50-yard line. And of course, Navy drove down the field. And we've already talked about the sequence of events of them fumbling on the goal line, and then the fourth down conversion for a touchdown. But my point is that whatever Army was doing right in the first half on offense, why did they stop doing it altogether? Why did they suddenly feel like they needed to keep the ball in Hellam's hands the entire time? There were several times where Helms had the pitch and it appeared the pitch had beaten contain to the outside, and it would have been a big gainer. But why didn't he pitch? Did they tell him not to pitch the ball? Were they worried that the ball was going to hit the deck? I don't know. On the errant pass, why did Helms not tuck the ball and run with it? If he'd have run to the sideline, it appeared from where we were sitting that he had beaten the outside rush, and he was the one man to beat. And he had a lot of real estate ahead of him that he could have run to, because most of the Navy defensive backfield was in deep coverage. So he probably could have picked up 10 to 15 yards and maybe picked up a first down on that play. That's not what happened. And after Navy scored their touchdown, that put them in the lead by 1 point, Army had another crack at the ball. And we really believe that this is the moment where the offense is going to rise to the occasion. They're going to drive down the field. They're going to run this final 6 minutes off the clock, and they're going to either put us in position for a game-winning field goal as time expires, or they're going to get the ball in the end zone. And didn't happen. Another 3 and out. Army had to punt, and they never saw the ball again. It reminded me of the way the 2016 Army-Navy game ended, only with the roles reversed. If you remember, in that game, Navy had the ball. They went 3 and out. They punted, hoping that they would be able to keep Army from getting a first down and running out the clock. But Army picked up a first down and ran out the clock, and that was the end of the game. Same scenario. So a game that was easily within Army's grasp, a game in which Navy was making mistakes that were almost gift wrapped to give Army the opportunity, was an opportunity squandered to bring the Commander-in-Chief trophy back to West Point. And it lies almost exclusively on the offense side. It was a game plan that simply was unimaginative. It was predictable, and it played straight into the reverse analytics of what has been beating Army all season. And that is, if you're going to just limit the ball to Helms right, Helms left, Helms up the middle, then it's so easy. It's just defense. When you go into defensive huddle, you just say everyone meet at the quarterback. And that's pretty much what it was. And like I said, why is it that every Army-Navy game for the past 7 years, we have to come in and make Navy's defense look like the Pittsburgh Steelers steel curtain defense when they're not? I mean, Air Force ran up almost 500 yards against these guys, running supposedly the same offense that we run. But if you go back and you look at that game and you look at what Air Force did, they did what I recommended last week, and that is you need to stretch the field. You need to get it to your playmakers. You need to exploit the perimeter. And you need to take advantage of Navy's over pursuit and play misdirection. Run some counters and traps, but it just wasn't happening. And there was absolutely, I think maybe B-backs carried the ball maybe twice. I'm just going to say this. There's a lot of work that has got to go into this offseason. There's a lot of soul searching that is going to happen with Monken and his staff and his game plan and his approach to the Army-Navy game. Monken has said before that when asked about the Army-Navy game, he describes it as a sledgehammer fight where two teams come in and they hit each other with sledgehammers until there's only one person standing. But I've also said that if the other team is not planning on fighting you with a sledgehammer and they're going to play a little more finesse and nunchucks on you, and you're stuck with one game plan, one weapon, and that's your sledgehammer, you're going to get beat. And what happens is this whole sledgehammer approach to the Army-Navy game becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They created a sledgehammer fight for their offense when it wasn't there. They moved the ball pretty effectively in the first half. As a matter of fact, almost all of Army's yards, about 200 yards, almost all of it, they picked up in the first half. So if you're moving that ball that effectively, getting the ball to playmakers, getting the ball in space, stretching the ball out, making Navy have to pursue and beating them to blocks and everything else that you were doing in the first half, why did it suddenly become so hard in the second half? Why did we have to shift the offense into neutral and act like we were just trying to run the clock out and preserve the lead? Where was the killer instinct on offense? Where was the killer instinct game plan? It was non-existent. And it's very unfortunate. I feel really bad for these players. Look, having played sprint football all 4 years, I can tell you, losing a game like that to Navy, in my first year, we did. We lost a game kind of like that to Navy, where we had the lead with 7 minutes to go, a much bigger lead, and we ended up losing the game. The feeling of this loss is so bone numbing and nauseating. It hurts to the core, and it takes a long time for it to go away. But between now and next season, I really believe there has got to be some serious soul searching about offensive strategies against Navy, because for 7 straight games, we have seen the exact same thing happen in the game with the offense, where it just goes into a reverse mode when we have the lead. And then it goes into a desperation mode when we don't have the lead. And it reflects nothing about what's in the playbook and what could have been devised to defeat. And like I said, this year's Navy defense was not a stellar defense. They proved that statistically all season long. But we literally turned them into the best defense in the American Conference in the second half of that game by playing into their strengths and not diversifying our offensive approach to the game. And it's very disappointing. I got to say, in the past 7 years, Monken has gone 3-4 against Navy. He's now 1-2 against Brian Newberry. And anyone who might have thought that Monken has got the mojo over Navy, nah, he doesn't. He doesn't. There is some type of stigma that creates an Achilles heel in the game plan approach to every single game against Navy of late, and that is by creating this super conservative quarterback is the only person who touches the ball mentality that gives Navy the easiest type of offensive play calling to defend. And it just kills any momentum the team might have had. And you know, 2021 was a bad loss. It was similar, where Army led by the same lead, 13-7 at the half, and they ended up losing to a bad Navy team, I might add. This year hurt worse than any loss to Navy in my recent memory. I'm still trying to process it internally. And I can only imagine how badly the players and the coaches got to be feeling about this. And there's probably second guessing a lot of decisions that were made in the game. My hat's off to Navy for the victory, but 2 straight years of allowing those guys to take away the Commander-in-Chief trophy, especially this year where you had them on the ropes and they were giving you gift-wrapped mistakes that were like opportunities to pour the gas on and run the score up on them for once, and you fail to do it. And it's completely inexplicable to me why the sledgehammer didn't get put away, and maybe some throwing knives and nunchucks didn't come out on the offensive side and start being a little more nimble and fast paced to get the ball into playmakers' hands, like Noah Short and Samari Howard. Samari was running very well in the first half. I don't think he touched the ball in the second half. So I don't know.
Okay.
I would like to think I've got answers for why the game came out the way it did. I don't think there is any answer for the reason the game came out. I'm not saying that the players didn't want to win. They definitely did. They just were not given an offensive game plan in the second half that was capable of putting the game away like they had the opportunity to do. And
Okay.
it was a bad situation to be in, and we saw the end result.
Sam, why did you lose that sprint football game back in what year was it? 1987,
1986.
1986? Yeah, why
No.
did you lose that game? What was the
Well,
difference?
in that
In a
game,
couple of words, not a 30, not a six,
no, I
not a
got
long
you.
answer.
I'll just put it very plainly. We were leading by a score of 21-3 with about 6 minutes to go in the game. Navy scored a touchdown. And we went 3 and out on these. We had a couple of offensive linemen that went out, and we went 3 and out on our next offensive drive. On Navy's next offensive drive, we held them. They ran a fake punt, and it worked.
Sam,
And
what's a one sentence answer on why you lost that game?
um, one sentence.
One
Navy.
sentence.
One sentence. Navy had to do a Hail Mary at the end of the game, and they were credited with a touchdown catch where everyone, including Navy, knew that the ball had gone through the receiver's hands in the end zone and bounced off the turf back into the receiver's arms. But the back judge, who did not have a clean
Okay,
view of
so
the ball,
you're
called it a
beyond your
touchdown.
one sentence. It sounds like okay, just you were two even teams that came down last play and they made the last play.
No, they didn't make the last play. It was a bad call. Even on the
Bad
video
call. Okay,
replay,
they got the
even on
call.
the video replay, it was an incomplete pass that they got credited with by the referees.
Okay. Well, I would say we should really be wondering how they lost last year. I mean, the difference this year, um, you didn't have the quarterback you had last year, who was a Heisman Trophy candidate, Bryson Daly. You had a quarterback playing his first Army Navy game, maybe like Bryson Daly 2 years ago, who actually won the game. You didn't have the running back Kanye Udo,
Yeah, I'm
who
gonna put
was
it.
a difference maker.
I'm gonna put
You
an
didn't have
asterisk
that
next
big
to
right
it.
tackle. What was the name of the right tackle?
Um,
It was playing his fifth year, super experienced.
oh yeah, Connor Finucane.
Connor, you didn't have Connor. So you had
Yeah,
lost a tremendous amount of talent on offense. And, I
and
think I think Kale played the best he could. He ran for 100 yards. He'd love to have that interception back. He wishes he threw the ball out of bounds. He wished he did what you said and ran the ball. But he's a player. He's
yeah,
21 years old, whatever age he is, and he's playing. And he had to make a split-second decision, and unfortunately, it didn't work out for him that day. He
yeah,
may be a much better quarterback next year. They're going to work with him all winter and spring and summer to try to be a better quarterback. And he has a chance to be because he's going to have next year a whole lot more experience, but he didn't have a lot of experience this year. He was just a gritty player who took a pounding because I was standing on the sideline for most of the game. And when the Navy players hit him, they were smacking him, usually two or three guys. And he was taking that whole game. So he's a gritty player. Why they didn't pitch the ball out, I think they just, what you said, Sam, they got super conservative. They didn't want to have a fumble. And, and they just said, let's run the quarterback with 10 blockers in front of him. And, and after a while, a Newberry led team knows how to stop that unless you
well,
can, so
if you teletype it, they do. I'll make an
you look
asterisk.
at it,
Yeah,
but,
Ken, stay in front of
they
your
had to
mic.
settle for a field goal, to 10, get to 10-7. And then they were lucky. They forced a fumble at the end of the first half and got the ball and kicked the field goal, 20 seconds left. But the thing that really hurt, in the third quarter, they went punt, and then they get the ball back and they get a field goal. They can get a touchdown. And that's where it really hurt. And Coach Monk will say, you always are at risk when you can't get that touchdown, when you aren't settling for a field goal. And then, just after the Navy field goal, make it 16-10. You said it was a 3-and-out, a punt. And then Navy punts, the defense stopped them, and Dale made the interception. If he had just run the ball there, as you said, he might have picked up another first down, kept giving the drive some momentum. And that was the second play of the drive.
Yeah,
And it led to Navy having to only go 50 yards for a touchdown.
yeah,
Get the ball back, down a point with a minute 42, and they have to punt. Actually, they got the ball back 440. What was it? It was, a couple of minutes left, and they, as you said, 3-and-out. And they desperately needed to get some offense. I just think that they just never found what I would call a big halfback. You know, is in the press box, the name of Ray Maples was mentioned because one of the Navy players was getting close to an Army Navy game record held by Ray Maples, who was a great Army runner in the early 2010s. And they just don't have a player like that this year. Um,
Yeah.
and that was my take on it. Navy came back strong. Navy got momentum. There's a reason. This was what, their 10th win of the year. 10-2. Yeah, there's a reason. They played well, and you got Blake Horvath, who was a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback. So
Yeah.
let's see, Richard, what's your take on the game, having
My,
watched from South Florida?
watching from South Florida, I saw an Army team that, frankly, just didn't do anything other than the field goal in the third quarter at the time, and that would make me think, oh, they're gonna get more points. Completely shut down the rest of the game. A really missed opportunity, shut down wise. Basically, also in terms of the running, other than Kale Helms, Samari Howard 12 yards, Jake Redner 4 yards, and Noah Short 4 yards. And the only touchdown of the game was by Helms, which was along for 26. Navy, on the other hand, Blake Horvath 107 yards, 1 touchdown, and then Alex Tetza 50 yards, and Eli Heinrich 28 yards. Navy did more of the running of the football, but Army, again, the inability. Even I think Sam was talking about in those other drives when they have the ball at a very important time in the game, and they don't capitalize. Really, I think a missed opportunity, and these are the losses that are going to absolutely sting.
Yeah, we'll all remember him for a
Yeah.
long, long time.
Mhm.
I don't know if Coach Munkin says he doesn't sleep after a loss, and maybe he hasn't gotten any sleep since this one, because this kind of loss that really gives you gray hairs when you have chances to win and you just can't. That doesn't happen. Chuck, what was it like at Madison Square Garden as you're watching the basketball game and you're checking the score?
Um, yeah, well, it was a very exciting day, and I thought for sure Army had this one wrapped up. I was hoping they'd pull it off. Unfortunately, the final 6.5 minutes were a classic study in snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
as Richard said, and I asked Coach Munkin about this in the post game.
Ken, keep your
120 yards
Ken.
rushing.
Ken, keep your mouth close to the mic, because every time you turn your
Okay.
head, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. You get a better microphone. Yeah, as I said, I asked Coach Munkin in the post game that Cale Helms ran 25 times for 100 yards.
Yeah.
And everybody else ran for 20.
Oh, yeah, it was good,
And,
especially, that quarterback sneak he pulled off at the beginning of the second quarter.
I mean, he ran and had a decent day running the ball.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get the ball to Samari Howard more than 6 times, and he only got 12 yards.
Yeah.
He couldn't seem like he could get open. They had a player, Navy had a linebacker keying on him.
Yeah, they
But
had a
he was
couple of
going
gold.
outside
Yeah.
most of the time.
Yeah, they had a couple
And Jake
golden
Rendina,
opportunities.
Jake Rendina, 1 carry for 4. Noah Short got the ball only twice for 4. Noah Short did catch 3 balls for 51 yards. Brady Anderson caught 2. Didn't get anything out to the tight end. Just we'll talk to Cody Worley. Hope maybe this week. Hopefully, we'll catch up or before the UConn game and ask him about it. But it was a very conservative play calling. But I think it's the nature of the game. They always say up there, "Don't let Army beat Army." Now, the offsides that you mentioned, Sam, were really impactful, and normally the Army offensive line very, very seldom has offsides. They've had a couple from the tight end, was had a couple, but that really did hurt. So
Yeah.
it's all very disappointing. Sam, was on the lighter side, was there any part of the Army Navy weekend that was positive for you?
Oh, sure. Let me just throw an asterisk out on something that you said earlier, though, Ken.
Okay, go
Last
ahead.
last season, Army's worst offensive performance against Navy over the last 7 years, and that was with Bryson Daly. Bryson Daly only had 50 yards, and he was the leading rusher on the team. As a team, they only had about 117 yards rushing total, and they only scored 13 points, turning the ball over 3 times. The season before that, Army won, yes, but they won because Caleb Fortner strip sacked Lavatai in the fourth quarter and returned it 40 yards for a touchdown. And that touchdown was the difference in winning the game.
And the
So,
defense made a goal line stand.
and they did, yes. So, just because Bryson Daly was the quarterback the past 2 years, did not make somehow the offensive performance by the quarterback significantly better than it was with Cale Helms this season. As a matter of fact, Cale Helms outplayed Bryson Daly the last 2 games of the Army Navy game combined. But the problem is that his the play calling itself, and some of the decisions he was making with trail pitchmen, they just didn't make much sense, and they did not allow the offense to put themselves in position to sustain a drive. And that's what they needed to do in the second half, and they just did not do it at all. And it was like a broken record from previous Army Navy games. Anyway, yes, I told Stephanie that outside of the last 6 minutes of the game, it was almost a perfect Army Navy weekend for real. I mean, it was Baltimore did a great job. We went to the Army Navy Gala on Friday night. It was extremely well attended. And unlike some of the previous Army Navy galas, at this particular gala, when the formal portion was over, a lot of people stayed and danced. And normally everyone bolts as soon as it's over. I thought that the talk by the soup and the Marine superintendent of the Naval Academy were great, very motivating. And the food was wonderful. The only thing was that the the uh, uh, the stuff that they have laid out for you, the Army Spirit stuff that they have out for you was kind of chintzy this year. I don't know what the deal was, so we made off with a couple of the centerpieces from the table. So
I was just going, where's your centerpiece, Sam?
yeah, I haven't unpacked it yet, but it's going to go on the bar back here when I pull it out. It's going to be a centerpiece in the center of the bar. The tailgate, we did our usual Johnny Mac tailgate. Saw a bunch of classmates, and the weather. Honestly, the weather. The mildest day of the entire weekend was actually Saturday, and we did not need to go into the club level, even though we were in the club. We did not need to go in and warm up. I mean, we were fine. I sat outside. The only time I really went back inside the whole game was at halftime to grab a drink, and made it back for just after the start of the third quarter. And even after the game was over, we went to an event that we have not been to yet. It was called the Drunk Old Grad Unofficial After Party. And there were a lot of people at that event, let me tell you. Stephanie was real excited to run into one of her TikTok stars that was there. But there was surprisingly several of the Army football players showed up at that event, and we got to talk to some of them. They were extremely disappointed about the game, and most of the players that we saw were all plebes and yearlings who are not starters, but they were, at the party afterward, and they were able to give their perspective. So it was a good time, and then it started to precipitate by the time we left that, and we literally took Sunday almost. We literally took almost all day Sunday as a recovery day after everything we'd been doing, and then. But it was a great weekend. We made a true long weekend out of it, so we didn't actually get back until last night. and had a couple of nice meals in town. Made some new friends. Got to visit with Herman Bulls, and that was great. It's always is. And met some very nice people who were there in different types of sponsorship capacities and rooting for Army. And then of course the let's not forget the spectacle and the pomp and ceremony of the game itself. I really thought that the national anthem, the flyover, the teams coming on the field, the president being there and doing the coin toss, everything was just very well done. Like I said, just the last 6.5 minutes of the game, you change that, and it was a perfect weekend for Army Navy. The stage was set, the upset was in the air. The Commander-in-Chief trophy was 6.5 minutes away. Didn't happen. And but we still walk away and say, thank you, Baltimore, for everything you did to put together a great show. We wish that it had ended like it did in 2016 when we broke the streak. It did end very similar. It's only that Navy had the ball in the lead when it ended.
Well, glad you guys had a great time at it. So did I. Got down there Thursday night, and we covered some of the Patriot games, which are basically a series of physical fitness tests extraordinaire. They had the first, well, we missed the tug of war, but we got to the second event, which was the Mogadishu run, which they did this year by running up a very steep 100-foot hill in the park. And they had about 6 competitors for each team, one for Army, one for Navy, and they had to run up the hill and back, and then climb the hill carrying kettlebells, 2 of them, and then they had to do it with a weight, and they had to bring these weights not only up but back, and this hill was not only steep but it was slippery, and then they also had to carry a teammate up the hill. So each person had to do that. Incredibly strenuous. Army did win. They seemed to be a little smoother at it. Then we went and saw the pull-up competition, and Army won that one as well. Then they had a great pep rally. The Navy band didn't show up, but the Army rabble-rousers and Cadet Spirit Band and the Navy cheerleaders all did a nice job. And then we went to the debate team match, and which is something we've covered for about 10 years. In fact, the first year we did it, they had it in a courthouse in Baltimore, which was a very impressive spot. This year they just did it in the convention center. And the resolution that they debated was about placing more additional military assets in the Arctic. And Army argued in favor, Navy argued against, and Navy won the debate. We just went and got dinner. We got down early because we needed to be in the stadium by 11 o'clock, really 11:30, to cover the march on. And so we got in early didn't have any trouble getting in. It gets very complicated. In fact, I just heard from somebody that it took them about 45 minutes to get through security as a fan. But we got in early, and they were very hospitable, had something to eat for us. And then we went down and covered the march on. We had John Turin was with me, and he covered from the top of the stadium. I covered from the field level. First, the march on of the Midshipmen with their band, and then they left, and then the West Point band went out and played music for the march on of the Corps of Cadets. Always very impressive. And then they had basically things started with the exchange of prisoners, the exchange students that are at each academy. The first captain marched out the 6 or 7 midshipmen who were at West Point this semester to the center of the field. And then the brigade commander from Annapolis marched out the half dozen or so cadets. And and they exchanged in that center on the 50-yard line. And neat tradition. And then they had very impressive parachute jumps by each service. And they use the professional teams, not the cadet or midshipman teams that they use may do the parachute demonstrations on a regular game day. And so they did a very impressive parachute jumps. Then things got started really with the coin toss. And as you said, Sam, all the leadership of the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps were out in the field, along with the Secretary of Defense and the President. And right after that, the teams were introduced, and wonderful flyover. The Navy jets flew over, and they fly over. They're gone in like 3 seconds, as slow as they possibly can fly them. And then the 4 Army helicopters came over the stadium, and I don't think they were more than 100 feet over the light towers. They flew very slow, very low, and very slow, right over the stadium. And the sound was very impressive. What was the biggest helicopter? Is that the Chinook, or is there another one?
Yeah, it was the Chinook.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal. And then then finally they're ready for the kickoff, and where they do the tsunami cheer, and boy, the sound is something. And then they actually play football.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I agree. I think Baltimore did a nice job. The stadium is very attractive, very well maintained. All the people from the Baltimore Ravens were there working. And so it was good. I did, when I went down, I spent the first half on the field, mostly in the end zone. And I actually got kind of stuck in the end zone for halftime because there's only 2 portals at the stadium, and they blockade both for the president. Because the president came down and from the Navy side, where he watched the first half, crossed the field, and then joined the Army side. So they had both of the portals locked down at halftime. So just so many different traditions. But the thing I was going to say is I went back up for the third quarter and was going back down on the field for the end of the game for the alma maters. And when I get off the elevator, there's Pete Hegseth right there waiting to get on with his look like with his family and entourage. And then of course the alma maters are amazingly solemn for the team singing First Army. And I will remember that Liam Fortner and Caleb Fortner stood next to each other right in front. The 2 Army seniors, brothers on the team. And then, of course, Navy had Pandemonium on their side. Big deal for them to win the game. So anyway, that was my kind of experience. And so, Chuck, tell us what's happening. What's happening in bowl games this week?
Well, first off, I can tell you that Black Knights will be concluding their season 2 days after Christmas, December 27th, with the Wasabi Fenway Bowl against UConn in Boston.
Okay, how about now the college football playoffs start this weekend?
Yes, they do.
And we have Tulane playing.
Yep, that's against Ole Miss. That's December 20th, 3:30. Got whole list here. And December 17th will be South Florida against Old Dominion. That's 5 o'clock. December 19th, 2:30, Memphis takes on North Carolina State. The day after Christmas, 8 o'clock, UTSA FIU. And another 2-day after Christmas game, same day as the Wasabi Bowl. But the day's going to start early. On the 27th, it's an 11 a.m. game between East Carolina and Pitt.
Okay. Very good. So we start the, one of the side discussions this week is related to the college football playoff and has an impact on Army and Navy is a lot of discussion of expanding the playoff field to 16 teams for next year, not at some distant target date. Apparently, decisions can be made by the end of January what the format's going to be and how many teams are going to be involved. But what they're looking at is expanding into the week that typically the Army-Navy game has been played in, at least for the last 20 years, where it's the only football bowl subdivision game that day. And the expanded format would move into that weekend. And the athletic directors, I know Theo Thomas Arakis has been working on it. I want to try and talk to him when we go up to Boston on what he's seeing. They're looking at alternatives as to what they could do, because it looks like the college football playoff is going to go to 16 games and add another week to it. What are you hearing, Sam? What would you like to see happen?
Well, for starters, I would like to see the Army-Navy game remain untouched as a standalone game. It should not be in competition. The Army-Navy game is one of the purest examples of Army football and Army football's greatest rivalry, 126 years old and counting. And no one can make the argument that people aren't watching the Army-Navy game. As a matter of fact, every single Army-Navy game is a complete sellout at whatever stadium it's at. And I saw that this year's Army-Navy game had almost 7.9 million viewers around the country. And it was the second largest viewing audience of the Army-Navy game since I think the 2018 year. So it not only packs the stadium, it packs the viewers. It is a gold mine for the network CBS that covers it, and it should remain a standalone game. It's college football in its purest sense, and just some of the greatest young men that you will find in college football ranks that are out there battling it out. And for the seniors on both teams, it's their last opportunity to battle each other. And if they have a bowl game, which both teams do this year and is great, that'll be their final game. And then they will be off to serve in the Army, in the Navy, and in the Marine Corps. I have no issue with the expansion of the college football playoff itself. I be more inclusive for sure. But there comes a point where you have to recognize that you just expanding the college football playoff to include other teams that are worthy of competing at that level of college football? Or are you doing it just so that you can include other teams? I don't know, but I've already made my statement last week that I personally do not believe that a team like James Madison, for example, should be in the college football playoff this year. And I kind of feel, in contrast, I actually don't believe expanding the college football playoff bracket is really going to have that much of an impact on Army and Navy. And the reason is Army was 11-1 going into the Army-Navy game last year, and they were undefeated in the American Conference, and they were ranked. They didn't need to be in the college football playoff. Navy, wasn't even given the opportunity to play in the American Conference Championship game, and I don't think that they would have belonged in the college football playoff either. So, we'll see what happens. It's really money driven. And another thing that I believe drives this whole talk about expanding the college football playoff is the transfer portal. I think college football is recognizing the impact transfer portal has on teams. And if you can be inclusive of more teams in the college football playoff, you may actually see fewer players jump into the portal before bowl season, because we're already seeing that happen. I'm not sure what's going on with UConn right now. I haven't really been paying attention, but I have noticed that UConn opened as a 3.5-point favorite. And last time I looked, Army's now a 6-point favorite over UConn. So what happened?
Really?
Did they have a bunch of players that decided to jump into the transfer portal?
We'll have to check on that. I know we'll talk more about that
I don't know.
next week.
I literally just saw that right before the huddle started, and I found it
Okay.
fascinating.
Well, Army's done pretty well in bowl games against teams that I guess wish they were elsewhere. Like Missouri, uh, or certainly Houston. The time they beat Houston by almost 50 points.
Yeah, but
Um,
remember that, you know, yeah, but I was at the game. Yes, Army ran Houston off the field. Houston had been running their mouths all week that they deserved to be in a better bowl game, but then Houston's two best players sat out the game, their quarterback and their nose tackle, and it was a major impact on their performance in the game from start to finish. But remember that Army has also been affected by this whole transfer portal thing. So last year, we know they were in the Independence Bowl. They were going to play Marshall, who was the Sun Belt champion, and Marshall, almost their entire roster jumped into the portal, and they had to cancel. And had it not been for Louisiana Tech, who, by the way, is announced Army will be playing Louisiana Tech in Ruston, Louisiana,
I was a little
on October
surprised at
3rd
that one.
next season. I think it's payback for the Independence Bowl. I really do.
That,
But
that that they played that game. So Army's going down there to pay it back.
I think that's what it is. I
Okay.
really believe that it's payback to Louisiana Tech for
But
stepping up to the plate in the Independence Bowl, because let's remember what happened in 2020. 2020 COVID year. Army was going to go to the Independence Bowl. You remember that? And then the
yeah,
team that Army was going to play, I forget who they were, they
was it
canceled because of
UCLA?
I honestly I don't remember, but I remember that the team they were going to play canceled because of COVID. And then the whole bowl game canceled, and Army almost did not even get into a bowl game, even though they were a 9-win team that year and a Commander-in-Chief trophy champion. And I think there was a team that backed out of the Liberty Bowl just so that Army could get pulled into the Liberty Bowl to play West Virginia. Otherwise, Army almost didn't even go bowling that year. So
Yeah, and then it was a good game, but unfortunately, Army was down a couple of players because Coach Monken let them go home for Christmas, and they came back. A couple of them came back with COVID and couldn't play.
yeah, and
Uh,
Brent Davis was out that game. He had COVID, so they I forget who did the offensive play calling for that game, because Brent Davis wasn't even in the booth. So
but
it had a major impact on the game, and
one
it
of
was
the
freezing cold and
one
everything else.
one of the stories I read this week, because there's about 8 major teams that decided not to play a bowl game. Several had lost coaches, others decided just not to play. And the article said the basic reason is that some schools lose money by going to bowl games, and the visibility and the experience of the players and whatnot just didn't make it worth what it may cost to go.
Well, yeah, well, we know the biggest example this year is Notre Dame. When Notre Dame was not selected for the college football playoff, they just up and announced that, kind of like Cartman on South Park. They were kind of like, screw you guys, I'm going home. And that's what they did. And they just announced up and announced. They turned down the offer to play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl and said, we're not going to play in a bowl game this year. So I'm not sure I support that kind of an attitude, because, a bowl game is supposed to be a reward for your players. It's supposed to be something that is the culmination of the hard work of the season, and you earn the opportunity to have one more game on a national stage against a worthy opponent, and you get a lot of visibility, and so it does really well for recruiting as well, and your school gets a payoff for it. So I'm just not sure, but I also saw that one of the bowl games is I don't know if they're going to play this year, but I think they announced that after this year they're not going to play it anymore, and that's the LA Bowl. So
Yeah,
some of
we
these
have a couple of those.
Yeah,
that are
some of these
really
games are they're on shaky financial ground anyway because of the location, the size of the stadium, and their traditional attendance. It just isn't, cost effective to continue to even have the bowl. So, and when you're just putting in 6-6 teams all the time, and I say that tongue in cheek. Obviously, Army's 6-6 right now.
but now you're putting in 5 and 7 teams.
Yeah, and they had to last year because of
They have
teams
to this year.
canceling. Yep, they're going to have to this year because a bunch of teams just simply announced they're not going to accept bowl bids. And then you have the transfer portal, and you have all the residual effects that has on a team's ability to even a school's ability to even put a team in a bowl game. So, we'll see what happens. And I suspect that when Navy plays Cincinnati in the Liberty Bowl this year, I really believe that the Cincinnati team that they're going to play is going to be a shell of the Cincinnati team that's been playing this season. I really expect they're going to show up with a lot of their starters in the portal. And, if that's what's going on with UConn, then Army's going to see the same thing. They're not going to see the 9-win UConn team that put 9 wins together this season, and they already lost their coach because their coach left to take another program. But we'll see how it happens. But one thing's for sure is that I have, unlike last season when Udo announced right after the Army Navy game, I have not heard of anyone on Army's team making any type of announcement about transfer portal. I think the one player that I had the biggest fear about was Jack Bossum on defense, and he had a whale of a game against Navy. He was a wrecking machine back there. Defensive MVP in my opinion, and he's a yearling. So let's pray that he has fire in his belly about coming back and beating Navy next year, and he's still wearing cadet gray once he reports for his first academic day for his cow year. So.
Well, yeah, this, at what point you have that factor once you step foot in class junior year, you're committed to 5 years of military service.
Mm-hmm.
And so the academy graduates about 80% of the cadets who show up on our day. They're trying very hard to try and improve that. But that is the point where they have normal cadet attrition. So we'll see what happens on that. I just think, when it was a 4-game college football playoff, there was a whole lot of everybody else who were good quality college football teams who wanted to have a good positive end to their season, and a bowl game in a major warm weather site was very attractive. But now when you have 12 teams in, looking like it's going to 16, that's where everybody wants to be. That's where the big money is. That's where the 100,000 seat stadiums are going to be full. Yeah, I agree, Sam. I didn't get a chance to comment on it because when you look at the college football playoffs, James Madison's a 21-point underdog to Oregon, and Tulane 17.5-point underdog to Ole Miss. The other 2 games are both Alabama and Oklahoma, and Miami and Texas A&M. Those will be good games. But now it's such a stark difference because the revenue from being in those games is so vast versus being in the bowl game where you're probably going to lose money. Yeah, some of the secondary bowls are really going to be looking at if they have a future. I mean, I really felt fond of the people who ran the Independence Bowl last year. I mean, the woman who was the chairperson last year, she came to several Army games. We did an interview. We talked to her down there. They worked hard at it. But even last year, I mean, the stadium was only about half full. And unless you got a big name sponsor, or you're really trying to, work with the tourism department of the city you're in, it's going to be a tough sell for, some of these smaller bowls. I even wonder if the Yankees can afford maintaining the Pinstripe Bowl or the Red Sox. I don't know if the Red Sox actually run the game in Boston. We'll learn more about it when we go up there. I know it's sort of like a nice thing to put a football field in a baseball stadium. Although Fenway Park used to hold a lot of football games. Patriots played there. There was a lot of college football there in the old days before some of the like BC Stadium was built. But I think it's all about the college football playoff now, and it's really just professional football.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do hope the Army Navy game can be maintained as the only game. There's talk about it moving to Thanksgiving, but then that's when there's a whole bunch of other rivalry games, and then you got a week for the conference playoff games. I guess nobody's going to be going to school much in college football in the month of December.
Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be. I kind of thought there was a thought that the last game would be Thanksgiving weekend, and then there wouldn't be anything to the bowl games, and then the kids could finish up school and exams. But I guess nobody worries about that anymore.
Yeah. I know when I was a cadet, Army Navy game was on Thanksgiving. But I think by the time my first year rolled around, they had moved it from Thanksgiving to the following Saturday. And that was just one of the original shifts of the schedule that they had made. Because I remember my parents came to the Army Navy game my first year, and I do not remember that. I do not recall that being Thanksgiving weekend. I think Thanksgiving weekend had been the weekend before. As a matter of fact, I know it was because uh, Thanksgiving weekend we were given a 2-day pass where you could leave on Wednesday and you could go eat Thanksgiving dinner locally, and then you had to be back Friday. I don't remember why it was like that, but originally, yeah, when I arrived, the game was still on Thanksgiving. Because when we went out, when they hauled us all out to the Rose Bowl in California, that was a Thanksgiving weekend, and we
There.
stayed with host families where the host families made Thanksgiving dinner for us, and it was pretty cool. But
How did they manage the transport on that to move 4,000 cadets and 4,000 midshipmen out to the
no,
Rose Bowl that year?
I can't speak for the Naval Academy. I'm not sure where they flew out of, but for the Corps Cadets, we flew out of Newburgh. And back then, Newburgh was not, Stewart was not an airport. Stewart was a Air National Guard base.
Sure.
And they had, they bussed us all up to Stewart, and they had plane after plane after plane of these airlines that fly nothing but military contract flights. And
Oh, okay.
you
So they
become
use
familiar with them,
contracted.
yeah, they're not
Okay,
military
gotcha.
planes. They're an actual airline, but they almost exclusively fly military, right? Overseas and stuff. And I don't remember how many planes. I mean, there was plane after plane after plane. You were assigned a plane according to your cadet company, you got on it. They did accountability when you arrived, and they bussed us all over to this big park in Los Angeles. I don't even remember where it was. And all the host families were there, and they had the rosters for us. And you'd go down the roster, and your host family would pick you up, take you home with
Really?
them. Yeah, and then your host families knew from the coordination when it was you needed to be where. And so they took care of all of that. And when the weekend was over, they were the ones who brought you back to the assembly point where we got back on the buses and went back to the airfield. We flew into an Air Force base as well. I don't remember which one, but it was there in Los Angeles.
Well,
So
that's a great story, Sam. There was a story I read about the folks in Atlanta wanting to bring the game there to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and I immediately thought of the airlift challenge that is. Actually, Saturday night when John and I were driving back, we were we didn't leave the stadium till about 8 o'clock. We passed the buses that they closed off a couple lanes of the New Jersey Turnpike, so the buses could travel unobstructed up the thruway. and we were in the other lanes, and they were still going. You know, they must have had a batch that left late, because that's still, you know, about 80 buses worth of cadets, and the Naval Academy needed the same thing, I guess. But it's
Yeah.
we'll see if they want to try and do that again. That's a tall order.
Yeah, I keep seeing that, but you hit the nail on the head. The biggest reason the Army Navy game traditionally it has and will remain traditionally in the New England and East Coast area is because of the logistics of moving the Corps and the brigade to the game. And if you take it beyond if you take it to a distance that is reasonably beyond surface transportation capable, and you have to start using air travel to get people from point A to B and back, it costs astronomically more than surface transportation. It really does. And I know that just from transporting cargo in the military. You always wanted to do surface transport instead of air if you could, because it was so much cheaper.
Sure.
A stadium like Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, you know what? In my opinion, it is a shiny new object kind of thing. People will see Mercedes Stadium from the outside and know what it looks like on the inside, and they'd be like, "Oh, this place would be fabulous for an Army Navy game. It holds 100,000 people, et cetera, et cetera."
I don't know if it's that big, actually, Sam. I think it's, you know, more in the 60 range. I actually took a tour of it when I was down in Atlanta for
I think that
the.
it holds anywhere from 80 to 100. And the reason I say that is because they always do the SEC championship game in there and everything else. And they're not going to go for a stadium that holds significantly less people than your average SEC stadium. Because, you know, for money and the fans. So it's a big stadium. It's like AT&T Stadium in Dallas. They're gigantic on the inside. They hold
Well,
a group.
AT&T Stadium is a little bit bigger, I think, because they can expand that to 100,000
Yeah,
seats.
and they also have used. Remember that the NFL has a minimum standard of fans that can be in the stands for a Super Bowl, right? And Mercedes Stadium has held more than one Super Bowl in it, so you know it holds at least 80,000 or more. So you know, but and would Army Navy sell it out? Absolutely, the Army Navy would sell it out. Would Army Navy sell out AT&T Stadium? Absolutely, it would. You know, Army Navy sells out a year in advance every year.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah,
from my
it's 71,000 seats.
so from my perspective, I'm a purist. I don't think that Army Navy should be in an indoor stadium, period. Army Navy is pure college football. Army Navy needs to be a game in which the elements, the weather and the elements play a factor in the game. And as fans, part of your experience for the Army Navy game is if it's snowing, you're watching it in the snow. If it's raining, you're watching it in the rain. If it's sunny and balmy, like it was in Philadelphia back in 2015, then you're like, this is really nice. And you're in short sleeve shirts, but you know, the players are enjoying the weather too. Saturday, as we mentioned, the weather really wasn't that big of a factor. It
No,
was,
it's great. It's as
it was
nice a day as you can have this past Saturday.
exactly
Although
about as nice a weather as you could expect for the Army Navy game, I thought.
I remember that 2015 game because the cadets didn't wear their overcoats.
No, it was in the
That was
70s. Yeah, it was
it
in the
was
70s that day.
it was amazing. But
I
yeah, I
remember.
agree with you. I like outdoor events. Although the NFL has a problem, you know, with so many games moving into December and January, where you can have horrendous conditions
Yeah,
for a game.
Stephanie's probably
That's
Stephanie's probably thinking, man, temperature in the 70s for the Army Navy game. Why wasn't I at that one? Pretty amazing.
yeah. Okay,
So,
hey, Stephanie, did you do any film clips for us? I didn't want to not ask you if you did. I keep getting.
I have not.
Okay, well, that's
Like
all right.
Sam said, we just got in yesterday and then all
That's all
day
right. You
today I
know,
had
that's
late
fine.
last night, yeah.
Okay.
I
She
had
had
to
a busy
drive.
day today. I know she had an appointment she had to go to.
No, that's all right. Don't worry about it. That's fine. Um, but we have on our YouTube page, we have a lot of video from before the game, from the Friday. Watching that Mogadishu run was amazing. The Navy kids kind of struggled with it a little bit. The Army kids were a little smoother. Um, but we have all of the march-ons and and a lot of the pregame events, and we've got the postgame talks with both Army and with Navy. John Tran was very helpful with a lot of that. So just go to KG Kraetzer Media on YouTube, and you can watch all of that. Actually, I think we had about 5,000 views on our video of the march on. One thing I will say, I talked to the SID from Navy about this. We were not allowed to take any video and show anything during the game. Like the pregame activities from the march on.
Huh.
And I'm looking at my phone during the game, and there's video of the parachute jump that one of the parents did, or
Yeah,
in the flyover. And I saw it, and I showed it to the SID from Navy. Is a very sportive guy, Scott, and because they were very clear that we could not show any video. So I was telling them, there's 5,000 reporters in the stands, local parents and alumni,
more than that.
or whatever it was. And that's one of the interesting dynamics on covering a game is the NFL is made it wide open for doing social media because they know all the fans in the stands want to do it. They want to send pictures and video home, and so they revved up the Wi-Fi in the stadiums. And actually, it was very strong Wi-Fi there in Baltimore, being an NFL stadium. And so, just one of the things that we noticed, trying to do our best job covering the game. So, okay. Are we going to talk about any of the college football playoff games
See.
this weekend?
Yeah, I honestly, I have not really taken a look at the games over the next few days, to really put that much thought into it. I know CFP is, round one is coming up. So, you've got JMU playing whoever they're playing, and Oklahoma and Alabama, Tulane and Ole Miss. And
Alabama and
Miami and
Oklahoma.
Texas A&M.
Alabama, Oklahoma, James Madison against Oregon.
right, right.
Oklahoma, Alabama will be a good game,
Uh,
and Miami and Texas A&M,
I
College
honestly,
Station.
I'm not really. I live in Alabama, and I'm not really certain Alabama should be in it either. But so we'll see what happens. I think that if there was an upset special to keep your eyes on for round one of college football playoff, it would be Tulane Ole Miss. And the only reason I say that is because Lane Kiffin is gone. He took he took the the Auburn position, I believe, and so he took the LSU job, and so he's gone. He's not going to be coaching, and that caused a lot of turmoil over in Ole Miss land. So there may be conditions right for Tulane to be able to avenge their only blowout loss of the season, and that was earlier when they played Ole Miss and they got blown out. But other than that, I think Oklahoma's going to beat Alabama. I'm pretty sure Oregon's going to roll JMU. And what was the other game?
It's Miami at Texas A&M should be a good game.
I think Texas A&M will take that one. Yeah.
Well, I think the home teams, but it's 100,000 people at Texas A&M. It's one of the huge stadiums in college football, and that's a big revenue day. That's what they used to call a big gate
Oh yeah.
game.
Oh yeah.
and a huge TV market. But yeah, I think James Madison is going to struggle. And I know we have the idea that you want to have one of the college group of five conference in the bowl. But I'm not sure. How did you get two this year? How was it that both James Madison and Tulane got into the college football playoff? I mean, they basically got in ahead of Notre Dame.
Yeah, that it doesn't make any sense. The only sensibility I could make out of that whole thing was that last season there was so many people yelling from the G5 conferences saying, "Hey, you guys completely ignored us. You didn't give us a shot to be in. That wasn't fair. It didn't meet the intent of the college football playoff." And the conspiracy theorists were also talking the same way about this is only to support the P4 conferences. You should just call it the P4 National Championship, blah, blah, blah. So when it came down to it this year, I think that the college football playoff committee was under more pressure to be inclusive of G5 teams, even if it meant getting somebody into the CFP that really doesn't need to be in it, like JMU.
Yeah, I don't understand what that is. I mean, then if they had done that last year, then Army would have gone in. Well,
Yeah,
last year was still the 8-team playoff. This is 12, and so I guess that was justification for going to 12 teams in it. But I think we'll see a couple of blowouts.
yeah. And the reason Army did not get in last year was because of the loss to Notre Dame. So, um, they got beat pretty badly by Notre Dame. They got mauled pretty badly by Notre Dame, and
I wouldn't say they got mauled. I think Notre Dame just ran it, but
they got
I thought
they got
I didn't
mauled.
think that.
They
I
got
think they
destroyed.
played it, but I think Notre Dame,
It was
it just had better athletes.
it was a meat grinder on a bad surface, and Army suffered a lot of injuries that day. That was the day Cody Harris Miller went out, and they lost somebody else that they lost a couple other players that essentially were lost for the season, and it really hurt the defense badly. The defense, especially in the second half, the Army defense was getting killed. So it seemed like every other play they were limping somebody off the field. So
Well, that's what happens when you play a dominant team, and Navy will. I thought Army played Notre Dame tougher than Navy did, um, but the scores weren't that different.
mhm.
Okay, well, let's break, and we'll find a time to do this again next week before the Army Yukon game at Fenway Park. I think it's going to be fun. I was actually at Fenway Park in September for a baseball game, and I was actually at the Army Navy baseball game there. I believe that was in 2018 in late April. What a nice evening that was. About 10,000 people at the game, and I'm sure they're going to do a lot of the things that they did that day to dress it up. Um, for a college football game. There is a lot of history. I wonder, Sam, we'll have to ask Richard for next week to look up if Army's ever played at Fenway Park before. You may
Good
have that for
question.
us. Yeah, because in the old days, they may very well have played Boston College there. I think
Maybe.
before.
I don't know.
I mean, this may go back to the 1920s or 30s even,
Go a long way
when
back.
Fenway was the biggest stadium in the area than Harvard Stadium. So okay, well let's any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to make one final comment here. And it is about offense performance in Army Navy game. When Jeff Monken came to Army, his original offensive coordinator was a gentleman named Brent Davis. And Brent Davis came from Georgia Southern, where he had been the same position, same offensive coach, offensive coordinator role with Monken at Georgia Southern. They were great friends, and Brent Davis remained the Army offensive coordinator until the 2022 season, when he was fired after the Army Navy game, a game that Army actually won. And the reason that he was fired the stated reason that he was let go was lack of offensive production in the Army-Navy game, and that they needed to break the code on creating better offensive production in the Army-Navy game. Here comes Drew Thatcher. Drew Thatcher kind of flamed out on us. I don't think his concept of offense ever really took off with the personnel that Army had. Cody Worley remained the quarterback's coach, but by the last quarter of the season, Thatcher was taking a back seat and Cody Worley was starting to call the offensive plays. And then Drew Thatcher was let go of at the end of the 2023 season, also a game in which Army won the Army-Navy game. Cody Worley took over as the offensive coordinator for 2024, and the offensive production in the Army-Navy game 2024 was the worst of the last 7 years, followed by this year where the offense basically took the entire second half off. So if the real intent is to create offensive performance, as in sustained drives, scoring points, putting the game away, running and keeping the attack mode, keeping the foot on the gas, controlling time of possession, winning by more than a point, then again, this offseason, this is probably going to be Coach Monken's biggest coaching test that he's had in a few years, and that is you need to deep dive and you need to get with Cody Worley. And I'm not saying to fire anybody. A lot of people took me saying this as me saying fire Cody Worley. I didn't say that. If Cody Worley needs to be demoted to quarterback coach again and somebody else needs to be brought in to create a fresh blood of idea for the triple option that can invigorate it against the service academies, especially Navy, then that's what needs to be done. But the fact is that the past 7 years body of work of Army offense against Navy is completely unsustainable. And it will be, it has been proven in the first 3 years of Brian Newberry's head coaching tenure that he knows how to beat it. And he will beat you consistently if you don't figure it out. It's got to be done this year. The clock's ticking, and we're going to find out next year what they did.
Okay, I have a feeling I'd like to know, and I don't follow it that closely, what they got at the prep school and what they see coming in as direct reports. They need, I think they need to invigorate the offensive line. Thank goodness they're going to have Brady Small for one more year. Paolo Generali is playing on a bad leg, and hopefully he can get healthy for next year for his senior year. But they need to work on revive, I think, their offensive line, and also they got to find a halfback. You know what we call the halfback in traditional football. Somebody,
it
can
didn't
bring
hurt
some
that.
speed
Yeah, it
and replace Noah Short too.
It didn't help Army's offense that Briggs Bartosh got hurt and he was out for pretty much the last quarter of the season. He was really coming into his own as one of the better B-backs Army's had in a while. He's a yearling. He's got an off season to heal up and get back out there. But it still is completely inexplicable to me that in this game, they pretty much abandoned the entire concept of running the B-back, whether it be Jake Rendina, who got one carry, and I don't think Carson Smith carried the ball at all. And why is that?
No, he didn't.
I don't know.
Did not in the Navy game.
Because, a lot of people remember Ronnie Makeda, and we'll talk about Ronnie Makeda as being one of the best triple option quarterbacks that Army ever had. And he never lost the Navy, and this was back in the 90s. They won the Commander-in-Chief trophy his first year. A lot of people think that that's because Ronnie Makeda was running the ball a lot. Ronnie Makeda never ran for 1,000 yards. Ronnie Makeda was never the leading rusher on the team. Ronnie Makeda was what a triple option quarterback needs to be, and that is a game manager, the guy who takes the snap, makes the reads that makes the triple option work. And when you're making the reads that make the triple option work, you're getting the ball to your playmakers. You're getting the ball to the B-back on the right call, and you're pitching the ball when you need to pitch it. And he was excellent at that. People need to go back and look at what Army was doing with Ronnie Makeda.
The other thing, Sam, that we don't talk a lot about is Army got very thin on their defensive line this year. They got Bowsam, But when Corey Harris Miller was not in there, they were not the same. And he was playing, and he played like 52 plays against Air Force, but he probably was not at full strength through the rest of the season. But they've got to find some more defensive line. That's what's hurt Army in some past years, is they haven't had enough talent on defense, especially defensive line. Well,
That's
let's call
true,
it today.
That's true, but I'll take the body of work the defense and Nate Woody did against Navy on Saturday was one of the best defensive performances I've seen from start to finish of Army against Navy in a while. It was brilliant.
No doubt, no doubt. The defense gave Army a chance to win
every time,
and I hope they can hold on to Nate Woody. And he's such a good guy. I talk to him every week on Wednesday night, and he's such a great guy just to talk to. He's the kind of guy you want your kid to play football for. And Cody Worley too. But Nate's just one of those people. He's been around the game forever. He loves it, and he loves the players, and he calls it a ball game. And I always enjoy our talks with Coach Nate Woody, and he's a mastermind of defense. Okay, let's break. And we'll try to pick this up again next week. And so I want to thank Richard Miller calling in from Florida.
My pleasure, Ken. Thank you.
And Chuck Donegan from Long Island.
Thank you, and congrats to
we're working on to be our reporter at the Pinstripe Bowl, by the way.
Yep.
We have to finalize that. But be nice to cover 2 games the same day with our team. And from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama, we've got Colonel Sam Houston. Thank you, Colonel.
Yeah, the pain, it's acute, but it helps to talk about it. And that's what we did tonight, helps the pain dissipate. And so all we can say right now is that there are 362 days until Army beats the hell out of Navy in football.
Yeah.
What do they say? 362 in a butt day? What does that mean?
Well, depending on, whatever time of day it is, there's still a portion of that day left. That's the butt.
Oh, okay. I heard the in the dean's video, one of the dean's many videos, they had the cadets do that commentary. Okay, and then
362 in the butt days until Army beats the hell out of Navy, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to that, and that will be at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. And we want to thank Stephanie for putting us on the air and all her contributions. Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome, Ken. And it's always a pleasure to listen. And I'm glad to be the background and just let y'all, do your thing. And it's amazing to just witness it.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it. And really, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. We'll work on a day for next week. And Army versus UConn at Fenway Park in Boston on the 27th. That will be a special day. And I know the folks from Army and the Army team will be ready to play that game, and we'll look forward to that opportunity to play in a college football bowl game in a very historic venue. Okay, this is Ken Kraetzer for CamVetsMedia. We cover cadets, midshipmen, and the military and veterans proudly since 2008. Thanks for watching.